My name is Victoria, and I'm 28 years old. I still remember the exact smell of my grandmother's house, lavender soap and old wood, the kind of smell that meant safety when nothing else did. Eleanor was 79, sharp-minded, and had spent decades quietly saving every dollar she earned as a seamstress. She never bought herself anything extravagant. She drove the same 2003 Honda until it could barely start. She clipped grocery coupons every Sunday morning. That woman had discipline carved into her bones. So when I noticed during a routine visit in the spring of 2 years ago that her savings account balance on her kitchen counter statement showed $12,000, when I knew for a fact she had well over $300,000 saved, my stomach dropped straight through the floor. I didn't panic immediately. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she moved funds. Maybe she opened a new account. I smiled at her across the table and poured her tea and kept my voice steady, but my hands were shaking under the tablecloth. I kissed her goodbye that evening and drove home with my jaw locked tight. The moment I got inside my apartment, I sat on the bathroom floor and just stayed there in silence for 20 minutes, trying to process what I had seen. I started digging carefully. I'm not an accountant, but I'm organized and I pay attention. Over the next 3 weeks, I pulled together every piece of financial information I could access. Old statements Grandma Eleanor had shown me before, records she kept in a green binder she trusted me to help her organize, conversations I had remembered and written down. The picture that formed was horrifying. Over 4 years, nearly $340,000 had been systematically drained from my grandmother's accounts through a combination of wire transfers, joint account manipulation, and forged authorization signatures. And every single transfer traced back to one direction: my parents. My mother and father had convinced Grandma Eleanor in her most trusting moments to add my mother onto her accounts just to help manage things. What they actually used that access for was funding my younger sister Danielle's lifestyle, her boutique business that kept failing, her apartment in Miami, her luxury SUV, 2 international vacations, and a brand new kitchen renovation in a condo she couldn't afford. Danielle was my parents' favorite, and that had never been a secret. Growing up, I was the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who handled herself. Danielle was the one who got rescued over and over again. But this was not a rescue. This was theft from a vulnerable 79-year-old woman who trusted her own daughter with her life savings. I knew they'd turn me away if I confronted them directly. They always found a way to twist everything into me being difficult, jealous, dramatic. So I stayed quiet. I kept visiting Grandma like normal. I kept showing up to Sunday dinners like nothing had changed. I smiled at my mother across the table while she talked about Danielle's new marketing strategy, and I nodded at my father while he poured wine and laughed at his own jokes. And the entire time, I was recording. I had done my research. I knew my state permitted single-party consent recordings. Every phone call where my parents referenced the transfers or Eleanor's accounts, I recorded it. Every conversation where my mother casually mentioned borrowing from Grandma's fund, I recorded it. I built a file that grew thicker every week. I wasn't going to confront them. I was going to bury them in their own words. I flew 14 hours to Hawaii when I found out they were all celebrating Danielle's engagement there, knowing they would try to turn me away at the wedding. At the hotel, my dad looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're not walking into that church." I smiled. "I know," I told him quietly. "I'm not here for the wedding." The look on my father's face in that hotel lobby stayed with me the entire flight back home. He thought I had come to cause a scene, to cry, to beg for inclusion the way I had done as a child, when they chose Danielle over me at every turn. He did not understand that I had spent 14 months becoming something entirely different, patient, precise, and finished with being invisible. I had not flown to Hawaii to crash a wedding. I had flown there because I needed them to see my face one last time before everything changed. I needed them to remember that I had been standing right in front of them, and they still underestimated me completely. The moment I landed back home, I made the call. I had already been in contact with an elder financial abuse attorney for 6 weeks, and she had reviewed everything I compiled: the account statements, the transfer records, the forged signatures, and, most critically, 17 recorded phone calls in which my mother casually referenced moving money from Grandma Eleanor's accounts as though it were grocery shopping. My attorney told me the recordings alone were enough to open a serious investigation. She had a contact at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, and within 48 hours of that meeting, the case was officially referred. I handed over every document, every recording, every note I had written with dates and details. I walked out of that office feeling hollow and certain at the same time. Grandma Eleanor did not know any of this was happening yet. That was the hardest part. I visited her every week and sat with her and watched her talk about my mother like she was still the devoted daughter who just wanted to help. Eleanor's mind was still sharp, but her trust was absolute, and that trust had been used as a weapon against her. I held her hand and listened and told her she was loved because she was, and because I could not yet tell her the full truth without risking her tipping off my parents before the investigation was complete. Keeping that secret from her was the heaviest thing I have ever carried. 3 months after I made the call, federal agents showed up at my parents' front door on a Tuesday morning. My mother called me 20 minutes later, screaming. She said I had destroyed the family. She said I was jealous of Danielle. She said everything she always said when she needed to make me feel like the problem. I let her talk. I did not raise my voice once. When she finally stopped, I told her calmly that I hoped she and my father had a good attorney, and I ended the call. That was the last conversation we have had. My parents were formally charged with elder financial exploitation and wire fraud. Danielle, after her own interviews with investigators, was found to have knowingly received funds she understood were not legitimately available. The legal process is still ongoing, but asset recovery proceedings have already begun on Grandma Eleanor's behalf. When I finally sat down with Eleanor and told her everything, she was quiet for a long time. Then she took both my hands in hers and said, "She always knew something was wrong, but could not bring herself to believe it. She cried, I cried. We sat together in her lavender-smelling kitchen for 2 hours and did not need to say much after that. Mom texted me a week after the charges became public. Just 4 words. What did you do in Hawaii? I read it once, set my phone face down on the counter, and went back to making dinner. She still does not fully understand that Hawaii was never the moment. The moment had been building for 14 months, in silence, one recorded conversation at a time. I am not sharing this story for sympathy. I am sharing it because elder financial abuse happens inside families every single day, and the people closest to the victim are often the ones least willing to act. I acted. Grandma Eleanor deserved someone who would. If this story moved you, if it made you feel seen or gave you the courage to face something difficult in your own life, please subscribe to this channel. Every subscriber tells me that these stories matter, that real voices deserve to be heard. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stay with me, because I have more to share, and none of it is easy, and all of it is true.